She thought it was a fake wedding, until the Hell's Angel biker whispered, "You're mine now." A broke waitress walks into what she believes is a simple stunt, a pretend ceremony for quick cash. But the moment the crowd erupts and the biker leans in to claim her, she realizes something terrifying. The wedding is real, and so is the danger chasing her. Suddenly, she's pulled into a world of roaring engines, hidden debts, and a man with a past darker than she can imagine. He swears he married her to keep her alive, but there's something he's not saying. A secret tied to her mother. A threat that won't stop until someone ends up in the ground, now trapped between a deadly enemy and the outlaw who swore to protect her. If a fake wedding just became real, how far will this biker go to keep her as his own? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now, and if this story speaks to you, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The fluorescent lights of Joe's Diner hummed overhead as Evie Carter wiped down the last sticky table, her arms aching from 12 straight hours of carrying plates and refilling coffee cups. The clock above the counter read 11:15, and the empty restaurant echoed with each swipe of her damp cloth across the worn Formica surface. She paused to count her tips for the third time, arranging the crumpled bills and loose change into neat piles. $27.35. Her heart sank as she added it to her mental tally for the week. Even with 4 double shifts, she was still going to come up short. Again. The rent was due in 3 days. And her mother's medical bills. Evie's throat tightened as she thought about the growing stack of envelopes marked "Final Notice" sitting on her kitchen counter. She'd been paying what she could, but it never seemed to make a dent in the total. The bell above the door chimed, making her jump. "Sorry, we're closed," she called out automatically, turning towards the entrance. The man filling the doorway made her take an instinctive step back. He was enormous, well over 6 feet tall, with shoulders that nearly touched both sides of the frame. His leather vest was covered in patches, and his arms were wrapped in colorful tattoos. But when he smiled, the expression softened his weathered face into something almost grandfatherly. "Hey there, little Evie," Tank said, his deep voice gentle. He was one of her regulars, always ordered the same thing: double cheeseburger, extra pickles, side of onion rings. He'd been coming in for months, leaving generous tips and treating her with an almost protective kindness. "Oh, hi, Tank." Evie relaxed slightly, though confusion creased her brow. "Did you forget something earlier?" He shook his head, running one large hand over his gray-streaked beard. "Actually, I came to talk to you. Got a business proposition, if you've got a minute." Evie glanced at her half-finished, closing duties, then back at Tank. Curiosity won out over caution. "Sure, I guess. Let me just grab my water." She retrieved her bottle from behind the counter and settled into one of the booths, Tank sliding in across from her with surprising grace for such a big man. "Here's the thing," he began, folding his hands on the table. "I've been watching you working yourself to the bone here. Double shifts, holidays, weekends, and still struggling to make ends meet, right?" Heat crept into Evie's cheeks. Was her situation that obvious? "I'm doing okay," she said automatically, the lie bitter on her tongue. Tank's kind eyes saw right through her. "Sweetheart, you're about ready to drop, and I might have a solution, a way for you to earn some quick cash. Nothing illegal," he added quickly, seeing her expression. "Nothing intimate, just a simple job, one evening's work." Evie's fingers twisted the water bottle label nervously. "What kind of job?" "A performance, you could say. The club, the Hell's Angels, we're having a private event at our clubhouse. Need someone to play a specific role. A bride, actually." He held up his hands as Evie's eyes widened. "Just for show. A mock ceremony. You walk down the aisle, Say a few lines we give you, that's it. No actual marriage, nothing binding. And for that one evening's work, $10,000 cash, up front. The amount hit Evie like a physical blow. $10,000. That would cover her rent, catch up her mother's medical payments, maybe even let her start taking classes at the community college like she'd dreamed about. This is real? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Not a joke? No joke. Tank reached into his vest and pulled out a business card, sliding it across the table. Come by the clubhouse tomorrow evening, 7 o'clock. We'll explain everything in detail, answer all your questions. If you don't like what you hear, you walk away, no harm done. Evie picked up the card, running her thumb over the embossed letters. The address was in a part of town she usually avoided. Why me? Tank's expression softened further. Because you're honest, hardworking, and we need someone trustworthy. Someone who can keep their word and keep quiet about club business. He stood up, his massive frame casting a shadow across the table. Think about it. No pressure, but this could be the break you've been needing. After Tank left, Evie finished her closing duties on autopilot, her mind spinning with possibilities and doubts. She locked up the diner and started her walk home, the warm Arizona night wrapping around her like a blanket. The streetlights cast pools of yellow light on the sidewalk, and she clutched Tank's card in her pocket like a talisman. It seemed too good to be true, and that usually meant it was. But Tank had always been kind to her, always straightforward. And $10,000. The thought made her dizzy with hope and fear. Just one night, she whispered to herself as she walked. Just pretend to be a bride, say some words, and walk away with enough money to breathe again. She tried to convince herself it was that simple, that harmless. But as she made her way home under the stars, a tiny voice in the back of her mind whispered that nothing this easy ever came without strings attached. Still, what choice did she have? Her mother's face floated in her mind, pale and drawn in that hospital bed, trying to smile through the pain. The bills weren't going to pay themselves. And maybe, just maybe, this was the universe finally cutting her a break. Evie reached her small apartment building, climbing the creaky stairs to her second-floor unit. Inside, she placed Tank's card on her kitchen counter next to the stack of unpaid bills. Tomorrow at 7 o'clock, she would at least hear them out. What did she have to lose? She got ready for bed, her body aching from the long shift, but her mind too full to sleep. As she finally drifted off, she dreamed of white dresses and motorcycle engines, of chances and choices, completely unaware that her decision to visit that clubhouse would set in motion events that would transform her life forever. The setting sun painted the Arizona sky in shades of orange and purple as Evie stood before the imposing brick building. The Hells Angels clubhouse looked nothing like she'd imagined. No graffiti, no broken bottles, just a well-maintained structure with clean windows and carefully tended flower beds along the walkway. Her hand trembled slightly as she smoothed down her simple black dress. She'd spent an hour choosing something appropriate, professional enough for a business discussion. Now, standing here, she felt oddly underdressed despite the building's modest appearance. A woman with silver-streaked dark hair opened the door before Evie could knock. "You must be Evie," she said warmly. "I'm Maria. Come on in, honey. The girls are waiting." Inside, the clubhouse surprised her again. The main room gleamed with polished wood and leather furnishings. Framed photographs lined the walls, showing groups of bikers at various events. Everything was immaculately clean and organized. "This way," Maria guided her through a hallway to what appeared to be a dressing room. 3 other women waited inside, surrounded by makeup cases and garment bags. "There's our bride," A tall woman with friendly eyes introduced herself as Sarah. "Don't worry, sweetheart. We'll take good care of you." Before Evie could process what was happening, they were helping her into a white dress. The fabric felt expensive against her skin, the fit suspiciously perfect. "The club takes these ceremonies very seriously," Sarah explained as she adjusted the bodice. "Everything has to look just right." Another woman, Jackie, laughed as she pinned Evie's hair into elegant curls. "Don't worry, though. None of this is legally binding. It's all for show." Evie nodded, trying to relax. The women chatted easily as they worked, telling stories about club events and making her laugh with their banter. It felt almost normal, like getting ready for a theater production. "There," Maria said finally, stepping back to admire their work. "Take a look." Evie turned to the full-length mirror and barely recognized herself. The dress was stunning, classic white satin with delicate lace details. Her honey blonde hair fell in soft waves, and subtle makeup enhanced her natural features. She looked like a real bride. "It's time," Sarah announced, checking her phone. "They're ready for you." They led her to a small anteroom beside what must have been the main hall. Through the door, Evie could hear the low murmur of voices and occasional laughter. "Remember," Maria squeezed her hand, "just walk slowly, smile, and repeat the words when prompted. Easy as pie." The atmosphere shifted suddenly as new voices approached. The women straightened, their expressions becoming more formal. The room fell completely silent as heavy footsteps drew near. He entered like a shadow, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in black leather despite the warm evening. This must be Wrecker, Evie realized, her heart skipping. The supposed groom commanded attention without saying a word, his presence filling the space. Dark eyes swept over her briefly, his expression unreadable beneath his neatly trimmed beard. Everyone seemed to hold their breath, waiting for his reaction. He gave a slight nod, and the tension eased fractionally. "Places, everyone," someone called from the hall. Music began to play. Not the traditional wedding march, but something softer, more melodic. Sarah arranged Evie's dress one last time and handed her a small bouquet of white roses. "Ready?" Wrecker's voice was deep, surprisingly gentle despite his intimidating appearance. Evie nodded, not trusting herself to speak. He offered his arm, and she took it, feeling the solid muscle beneath his jacket. Together, they walked toward the double doors. The main hall had been transformed. Rows of chairs lined either side of a central aisle, filled with club members and their families. Candles flickered everywhere, casting a warm glow. It looked absolutely real, down to the smallest detail. As they walked forward, Evie noticed things that made her pulse quicken. A man in a clerical collar waited at the front. Not someone playing a priest, but clearly the real thing. On the podium beside him lay what appeared to be official documents, a pen laid carefully across them. Several people in the front row held pens of their own, watching intently. "It's just for authenticity," Evie told herself, just making it look real. The ceremony began. The priest spoke about love, commitment, and sacred bonds. Evie barely heard the words, focused on keeping her breathing steady. Wrecker stood beside her, solid as stone. "Repeat after me," the priest said softly. Evie spoke the traditional vows in a near whisper, her voice shaking, slightly. "I, Evie Carter, take you." The scratch of pens on paper caught her attention. The witnesses were writing, their movements quick and practiced. Still part of the show, she thought desperately. It has to be. "By the power vested in me," the priest intoned, "I now pronounce you husband and wife." The crowd erupted in cheers. Confetti rained down, catching in Evie's hair like snow. Before she could process what was happening, Wrecker's strong arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her close against his chest. His breath was warm against her ear as he whispered the words that made her blood run cold. "You're mine now." Evie's smile froze on her face as the celebration swirled around her. The cheering grew louder, but she barely heard it over the pounding of her heart. Confusion and panic rose in her chest as she stood there, trapped in Wrecker's embrace, wondering what she had really just agreed to. The celebration swirled around them like a storm, but Wrecker's firm grip on Evie's elbow remained steady as he guided her away from the crowd. Her white dress rustled against the worn wooden floors as they moved down a quieter hallway, leaving the sounds of laughter and music behind. "In here," Wrecker said softly, opening a heavy door and ushering her into what appeared to be an office. Evie's hands trembled as she gripped the back of a leather chair. "What just happened?" Her voice came out barely above a whisper. That couldn't have been." It was real. Wrecker's deep voice carried no hint of apology, though his eyes held something that might have been concern. "The marriage is legal and binding." The room spun slightly. Evie sank into the chair, her knees no longer able to support her. The satin of her wedding dress, her actual wedding dress, pooled around her feet. "Why?" The single word held all her confusion and fear. Wrecker leaned against his desk, his massive frame somehow less threatening than she expected. "Because there's a man named Russo who was planning to take you. Tonight, actually. We had to move fast." "Take me?" Evie shook her head, struggling to understand. "I don't know anyone named Russo." "He's a loan shark. Word is he's been watching you for weeks, tracking your schedule at the diner, learning your routes home." Wrecker's jaw tightened. "He knows about your mother's medical debts." A cold chill ran down Evie's spine. She had been juggling payments to various creditors since her mother's passing, but she'd never heard this name before. "But I've been making the payments," she protested, weakly. "I mean, not as much as they want, but I'm trying." "This isn't just about the money." Wrecker's dark eyes fixed on her face. "Russo believes your mother left something valuable behind. Something he wants." Evie's hands clenched in her lap. "That's impossible. We lost everything paying for her treatments. The apartment was practically empty when she—" Her voice caught. "There was nothing valuable. Nothing at all." "Russo thinks otherwise." Wrecker straightened, his leather jacket creaking slightly. "And he's not the kind of man who takes no for an answer. He was planning to grab you, force you to tell him where it is." "But I don't know anything." Panic edged into Evie's voice. "I can't tell him what I don't know." "Doesn't matter to someone like him." Wrecker's voice was gentle, despite his harsh words. "He would have hurt you trying to get answers you don't have." Tears pricked at Evie's eyes. "So you married me to stop him?" Wrecker nodded slowly. "You're under the club's protection now. Legally and otherwise. Russo won't dare touch a Hell's Angel's wife." "Wife." The word felt foreign on Evie's tongue. She looked down at her left hand, where a simple gold band now rested. I can't. I know it's overwhelming." Wrecker moved closer, though he was careful to maintain some distance. "But I need you to understand something, Evie. This isn't about possession. It's about protection." She raised her eyes to his face, searching for any sign of deception. His expression remained open, steady. "You're safe here," he continued. "No one will hurt you. No one will force you to do anything you don't want to do, including me." A sob caught in her throat. The events of the evening crashed over her like a wave. The ceremony, the revelations, the danger she hadn't even known existed. Wrecker straightened. "I'll give you some time alone. process things. When you're ready, we can talk more about arrangements." He moved toward the door, his steps surprisingly quiet for such a large man. "Wait," Evie called out, her voice shaking. "How did you know? About Russo's plans?" Wrecker paused, his hand on the doorknob. "We have ways of hearing things. Tank noticed you seemed worried lately. Started asking around. Found out Russo had been making plans. So Tank is one of us. He's been keeping an eye on you since we first heard whispers of trouble." He glanced back at her. "We protect our own, Evie. And now that includes you." With that, he stepped out, closing the door softly behind him. Evie sat alone in the leather chair, her white dress spread around her like fallen snow. The office was quiet, peaceful even, with its dark wood paneling and neat bookshelves. A far cry from the violent world she'd just learned existed around her, her eyes fixed on the gold band encircling her finger. It felt heavy, significant. A symbol of protection, Wrecker had said, not possession. She twisted the ring slowly, watching it catch the light. In the space of one evening, she had become a wife, a stranger's wife, a biker's wife, all to escape a danger she hadn't even known was lurking in the shadows. The ring glinted as she moved her hand, as real and solid as the marriage license that had been signed downstairs, as real as the priest who had pronounced them husband and wife, as real as the man who had just left the room, her husband who had married her to save her life. Evie stared at the ring, trying to make sense of her new reality. Everything she thought she knew about her life had shifted, transformed into something unrecognizable. And yet here she sat, in a biker club's office, wearing a wedding dress and a gold band, wondering what tomorrow would bring. Sunlight filtered through the office blinds, painting golden stripes across Evie's face. Her eyes fluttered open, momentarily confused by the unfamiliar surroundings. The leather couch beneath her creaked as she shifted, and the white wedding dress rustled like tissue paper. Wedding dress. The memories flooded back. She sat up slowly, her head spinning with the events of the previous night. The ceremony, the revelations, Wrecker's explanation. She had fallen asleep here in his office, emotionally exhausted, and he had let her rest undisturbed. A gentle knock at the door made her jump. "Come in," she called, quickly smoothing down her rumpled dress. Wrecker entered, carrying 2 steaming coffee cups. His presence filled the doorway, but his movements were careful, deliberate, like someone used to managing their own strength. "Thought you might need this," he said, offering her one of the cups. "Thank you." Evie wrapped her hands around the warm ceramic, grateful for something familiar to hold on to. The coffee was strong and sweet, exactly how she liked it. She wondered if Tank had told him that too. Wrecker settled into the chair across from her, his expression grave. "We got some intel overnight, about Russo." Evie's hands tightened around her cup. "What kind of intel?" "He's furious." Wrecker's voice was low, controlled. "Finding out you're under our protection, it's thrown a wrench in his plans. He's already making moves." "What kind of moves?" "He's partnered with the Iron Vultures." Wrecker watched her face carefully. "They're a rival club, known for kidnapping, extortion, the kind of things we don't touch." Evie's coffee suddenly tasted bitter. "Why would they help him?" "Bad blood between our clubs. They'll take any chance to come at us." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Which means you're still in danger, maybe more than before." The cup trembled in Evie's hands. She set it down before she could spill it. What do I do?" "That's your choice to make." Wrecker's eyes met hers, steady and serious. "You can leave now. Take what money you have and run. Try to stay ahead of them on your own." The thought of running, alone and hunted, made her stomach clench. Or you stay under my protection, for real. He sat back, giving her space. That means living with me, learning how to navigate this world. It won't be easy, but you'll be safe. Evie's mind whirled with the impossible choice. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory, gentle but firm. Sometimes the right path isn't the easy one, sweetheart. Sometimes it's the one that scares you most. Her mother, who had fought so hard to give her a good life, who had left her with nothing but debts, and, apparently, some mystery that had caught Rousseau's attention. If I stay, she began carefully, what exactly would that mean? You'd live in my house, learn our security protocols, always have someone watching your back. He paused. But nothing more than that, not unless you want it. I meant what I said last night. This is about protection, not possession. Evie twisted the gold band on her finger. Your world, it scares me. The violence, the illegal things. Good. His response surprised her. It should scare you. Fear keeps you alert, keeps you alive. But I promise you this, I will never hurt you, never force anything you don't want, and I'll do everything in my power to keep others from hurting you, too. She looked around the office, at the neat bookshelves and organized desk. Not what she'd expected from an outlaw biker. Then again, nothing about this situation was what she'd expected. I don't have anywhere else to go, she admitted quietly. No money, no family, no safe place. You do now. His voice was gentle but firm. If you choose it. Evie closed her eyes, remembering her mother's last days. How peaceful she had been, even in pain. How she had made Evie promise to be brave, to find her own path to happiness. Okay, she whispered, opening her eyes. I'll stay, for now at least. Wrecker nodded, accepting her conditions without argument. Pack a bag from your apartment, only what you need most. We'll send someone for the rest later. Now? Now. The sooner we get you settled, the better. He stood, his movements fluid despite his size. The vultures don't waste time once they pick a target. Evie rose shakily, still in her wedding dress. I need to change first. There's a bathroom down the hall. One of the girls left some clothes for you. He gestured to a small duffel bag by the door. I'll wait outside. 20 minutes later, Evie emerged wearing jeans and a soft sweater that fit surprisingly well. Her wedding dress was carefully folded in the duffel bag, a reminder of how quickly life could change. The clubhouse was quiet this early, only a few members moving around with coffee cups. They nodded respectfully as Wrecker led her through the main room and out to the parking lot. The sunrise painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, beautiful and ordinary, as if the world hadn't completely shifted beneath her feet. Wrecker's motorcycle waited by the curb, massive and gleaming. Ready? He asked, holding out a helmet. Evie took it, her hands surprisingly steady. She thought about her mother's gentle teachings about faith and courage, about her own desperate situation, about the unknown danger lurking in her past. Ready, she said, and meant it. The helmet felt heavy but secure as she fastened it, like the wedding ring on her finger, like the promise of protection from the man standing beside her. None of it was what she had imagined for her life. But right now, it was what she needed to survive. The gravel crunched under Wrecker's motorcycle as they pulled up to a cabin nestled among towering pine trees. Evie had expected something rough and Spartan. Instead, she found herself staring at a welcoming 2-story home with a wide front porch and window boxes full of bright flowers. The club owns the land, Wrecker explained as he helped her off the bike. But I built the house myself. Inside, warm afternoon light streamed through large windows, illuminating spaces that took Evie's breath away. Hand-carved furniture filled the living room, a massive dining table, elegant chairs, even delicate end tables with intricate patterns worked into the wood. "You made all this?" she asked, running her fingers over the smooth surface of a bookshelf. "Keeps my hands busy," he replied simply. "Helps me think." The walls held carefully framed photographs, landscapes mostly, but also a few showing Wrecker with what appeared to be family members. One particular photo caught her eye. A younger Wrecker in military dress blues, standing beside another young man in the same uniform who shared his features. "My brother?" Wrecker said quietly, noticing her gaze. "He's gone now." Evie nodded, recognizing the weight of grief in his voice. She followed him upstairs, where he showed her to a spacious guest room decorated in soft blues and creams. "This is your space," he said firmly. "I won't enter without permission. The door locks from the inside and the bathroom is private. Make yourself at home." That first evening passed quietly as Evie unpacked her few belongings. To her surprise, Wrecker cooked dinner, a simple but delicious pasta dish that they ate at the kitchen island, making careful conversation about practical matters like security protocols and club schedules. The following morning, Evie woke to the smell of coffee and bacon. She found Wrecker in the kitchen, already dressed for the day in his usual black t-shirt and jeans. "Thought you might be hungry," he said, sliding a plate toward her. "We need to head to the clubhouse later. Some people you should meet." At the clubhouse, Evie was introduced to various members, each one surprising her in different ways. There was Maria, the motherly cook who immediately took Evie under her wing, showing her around the kitchen where club members gathered for meals. Bullet, despite his intimidating name and appearance, displayed a dry sense of humor that made Evie laugh despite her nervousness. Crow, the quiet mechanic, simply nodded at her but later brought her a cup of tea exactly when she needed it most. Later that afternoon, Evie observed something unexpected: club members unloading trucks full of donated food and supplies. "Monthly delivery to the local shelters," Maria explained, handing Evie a box to carry. "The club takes care of its community." The next day brought more surprises. While sorting through donation items with Maria, Evie watched through the window as several club members taught neighborhood kids how to fix their bicycles. The scene was so far removed from her preconceptions about outlaw bikers that she had to pause and really look. "People see what they expect to see," Maria said wisely, following her gaze. "But there's always more to the story." That evening, returning home with Wrecker, Evie found herself relaxing slightly. The constant fear was still there, but it was softening around the edges as she observed more of this unexpected world. "We should talk," Wrecker said after dinner, gesturing to the living room. "Clear communication keeps people alive." They sat in comfortable chairs near the fireplace, where a small fire crackled despite the mild weather. Evie noticed that while other club members had offered him beers throughout the day, Wrecker had stuck to water or coffee. "Ask whatever you need to know," he said. "I'll tell you the truth." "Why?" She hesitated, then pressed on. "Why do you avoid drinking? Most of the others don't." A shadow crossed his face. "Alcohol makes people stupid. Stupid gets people killed. I've seen enough death." The raw honesty in his voice sparked something in Evie. She found herself sharing stories about her mother's illness, the mounting medical bills, the crushing weight of debt and grief. Wrecker listened without judgment, occasionally asking quiet questions that showed he was truly hearing her. As darkness fell outside, Evie noticed something on the side table, a well-worn Bible with numerous bookmarks protruding from its pages. Wrecker followed her gaze. "Surprised?" he asked, a slight defensive note in his voice. "A little," she admitted, "but it fits somehow." He nodded slowly. "Faith and violence don't mix well. but sometimes the path to redemption isn't straight or clean. Over the next several days, Evie noticed more things about her unlikely protector. How he spent early mornings in his workshop, carefully crafting beautiful things from raw wood. How he treated everyone at the club with respect, from the highest-ranking members to the newest prospects. How he kept his word in every small way, building trust through consistent actions rather than empty promises. One evening, about a week into her stay, Evie padded downstairs for a glass of water. Passing Wrecker's partially open door, she paused at the sight within. He knelt beside his bed, head bowed, hands clasped. His whispered words carried clearly in the quiet house. "Lord, keep her safe. Guide my hands to protect her. And if there's a price to be paid, let it fall on me instead." The simple, heartfelt prayer caught Evie off guard. Something shifted in her chest. Not quite trust, but perhaps its beginning. She moved quietly past his door, leaving him to his private moment of devotion, but carrying with her a new understanding of the complex man who had unexpectedly become her guardian. As morning light filtered through the cabin's windows, Evie found herself preparing for another day at the club. Over breakfast, Wrecker mentioned their plans for the day. "We run a food bank program," he explained, buttering his toast. "Helps local seniors and veterans who can't make ends meet." "Really?" Evie couldn't hide her surprise. The idea of tough bikers running a food bank seemed almost comical. "Everyone needs help sometimes," Wrecker said simply. "Even the strongest among us." At the clubhouse, Evie discovered an operation more organized than she expected. Tables were set up assembly line style, with club members efficiently packing boxes. Maria supervised everything, calling out instructions and checking lists. "Each box needs to be perfect," Maria explained to Evie. "We know what our people need. Mr. Johnson needs low-sodium items for his heart. Mrs. Rodriguez can't have anything too heavy to lift. It matters." Evie watched as Wrecker moved among the tables, his large frame somehow gentler here. He checked labels carefully, made notes, and spoke softly with volunteers. When an elderly veteran arrived early for his box, Wrecker immediately stopped what he was doing to help the man to a chair. "Let me bring that out to your car, sir," Wrecker said, his voice filled with genuine respect. The older man's eyes lit up with recognition. "You're the one who fixed my grandson's bike last month," the veteran said. "Never asked for a dime?" Wrecker shrugged. "Kids need bikes that work." Throughout the morning, Evie noticed more moments like this. Wrecker knew everyone's names, their situations, their struggles. He carried boxes to cars, listened to concerns, and promised follow-up visits to check on people living alone. During a quiet moment, while they sorted canned goods, Evie found herself opening up. "My mom would have loved this," she said softly. "She always said helping others was the best medicine for a hurting heart." Wrecker's hands stilled. "Tell me about her." The words came easier than Evie expected. She told him about her mother's garden, how she grew extra vegetables to share with neighbors. About the long nights during her illness, when she'd still insist on knitting blankets for the hospital's newborn unit. About the crushing weight of the medical bills that kept arriving even after she was gone. "She never stopped giving," Evie finished, wiping her eyes, "even when she had nothing left." Wrecker's voice was rough when he spoke. "Sounds like she raised her daughter the same way." They worked in companionable silence for a while, but something had shifted. The shared moment had created a bridge between them. Later, as they delivered boxes to homebound seniors, Wrecker began sharing his own stories. "Had a brother once," he said as they drove between deliveries. "Tommy, youngest of us, 4 boys, always trying to prove himself." Evie heard the pain beneath his words. "What happened?" "Rival gang moved in on our territory. Tommy thought he could handle it alone. Wrecker's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. I was supposed to have his back. Got there too late. Oh, Wrecker, Evie breathed. Without thinking, she placed her hand over his on the wheel. It wasn't your fault. Been carrying it for 10 years, he admitted. Some weights don't get lighter with time. My mom used to say that guilt is like carrying stones in your pockets, Evie said gently. At some point you have to decide which ones to keep and which ones to let go. Wrecker glanced at her, something vulnerable in his expression. Your mother sounds wise. She'd want you to forgive yourself, Evie said, just like she taught me to forgive myself for not being able to save her. The afternoon brought rain, soft and steady. As they unloaded the last of the boxes, Evie shivered in the cooling air. Without a word, Wrecker shrugged off his leather jacket and draped it over her shoulders. The warmth of it enveloped her, carrying his scent, leather and something woodsy. Their eyes met, and time seemed to pause. Something unspoken passed between them, tender and new. Evie felt her heart skip, then race to catch up. Wrecker's hand lingered on her shoulder a moment longer than necessary before he turned back to their task. That evening, lying in her bed listening to the continued patter of rain against the windows, Evie realized something that both comforted and terrified her. Here, in this unlikely place, with this unexpected protector, she felt truly safe for the first time since her mother died. The feeling wrapped around her like Wrecker's jacket had, warm, secure, and utterly terrifying in its intensity. Because safety meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant the potential for loss. Yet, as she listened to the quiet movements of Wrecker in his workshop below, she couldn't stop her heart from softening toward this gentle giant who packed food boxes for the elderly and carried such deep pain in his soul. The rain fell steadily outside, its rhythm matching her heartbeat as she stared at the ceiling, torn between the desire to embrace this new feeling of security and the fear of what that might mean. Sleep eluded her as she wrestled with emotions she hadn't expected to face. Not here, not with him, not in this strange new life she'd stumbled into. Morning light filtered through the cabin's windows as Wrecker paced the kitchen, his phone pressed to his ear. Evie watched from the doorway, clutching her coffee mug, noting how his expression darkened with each passing moment. "How many?" he asked, whoever was on the line. A pause. "And you're sure they're his?" Another pause. "Keep eyes on them. I want to know every move." He ended the call and turned to Evie, his face grim. "Russo's hired more muscle. He's got people watching your old apartment building, the diner, even your mother's gravesite." Evie's hands tightened around her mug. "Why won't he just give up? What could be so important?" "He believes you have information," Wrecker said carefully. "Something worth killing for." Evie set her mug down and sank into a kitchen chair. "But I don't have anything. Mom never kept secrets from me." Even as she said it, something nagged at her memory. She reached for her purse, the same one she'd carried since before her mother's funeral, and pulled out a worn leather notebook. Her mother had always carried it, jotting down recipes, phone numbers, little reminders. "I've looked through this dozens of times," she said, flipping through the familiar pages. "There's nothing." Her fingers caught on something different. Between two pages that had always stuck together, she felt an edge. Carefully, she worked her fingernail into the seam. A folded sheet, yellowed with age, slipped free. Wrecker moved closer, watching intently as Evie unfolded the paper with trembling hands. 2 lines of her mother's distinctive handwriting stared back at her. Lena Kay. Help her disappear. The memory hit Evie like a physical force. "Oh my God," she whispered. Lena. Who's Lena? Wrecker asked quietly. Evie closed her eyes, reaching back through time. It was maybe 6 years ago. A girl showed up at our door one night. Young, maybe 16 or 17. Mom sent me to the store for supplies, but when I came back, I could tell she'd been crying. She opened her eyes, looking up at Wrecker. She stayed with us for almost 2 weeks. Mom was so protective of her, wouldn't let her near windows, kept the curtains drawn. Then one morning she was just gone. Wrecker's jaw tightened. And you never knew why she was there? Mom just said some people needed guardian angels sometimes. Evie traced her finger over the name on the paper. She made me promise never to mention Lena to anyone. I almost forgot about it until now. Wrecker pulled out a chair and sat beside her. Russo's operation. It's not just loans and threats. He traffics people, especially young girls. If your mother helped one escape. He'd want revenge, Evie finished, feeling sick. But why now? After all these years? Because Lena might be ready to talk, Wrecker said. If she's built a new life, gained some strength, she could be a threat to his whole operation, and you're his link to finding her. But I don't know where she is, Evie protested. I never knew. Doesn't matter. He thinks you do, and that makes you valuable or dangerous, depending on his mood. The day passed in a blur of worry and speculation. Evie couldn't stop thinking about Lena, her scared eyes, how young she'd looked, the way her mother had protected her like a mama bear with her cub. As dusk approached, the air cooled enough to sit on the cabin's front porch. Wrecker brought out 2 mugs of tea, handing one to Evie before settling into the chair beside her. The forest around them was peaceful, birds calling their evening songs. My mother was so much braver than I knew, Evie said softly. All those years of struggling to make ends meet, and she still took in a stranger who needed help. Sounds like that's exactly where you got your heart, Wrecker replied. Taking double shifts to pay her medical bills, never giving up on her. I couldn't save her, though, Evie whispered. In the end, I couldn't protect her the way she protected others. Wrecker's hand found hers in the growing darkness. But you can honor her by letting someone protect you now. Evie looked at their joined hands, feeling the strength in his gentle grip. I'm scared, she admitted. Not just of Russo, but of everything, this whole situation. These feelings I'm starting to… She cut herself off, blushing. Wrecker squeezed her hand. Your mother protected someone who needed it, he said firmly. Now I'll protect you. The conviction in his voice wrapped around her like a warm blanket. As the last light faded from the sky, Evie let herself lean slightly against his shoulder, drawing comfort from his solid presence. Her mother's secret had put her in danger, yes, but it had also led her here, to this unlikely sanctuary, to this man who understood protection and honor in his bones. The notebook sat in her lap, its hidden page now revealed, connecting past to present in ways she never could have imagined. Her mother's final mystery had been an act of courage and compassion, traits she had passed down to her daughter, whether Evie realized it or not. The morning sun filtered through the cabin windows as Wrecker walked Evie through another safety drill. If someone grabs you from behind, he demonstrated with gentle hands on her shoulders, drop your weight and twist like this. Evie followed his instructions, practicing the defensive move until her muscles remembered it. Over the past day and a half, they'd covered everything from escape routes to emergency signals. Each lesson brought them closer, building trust through shared purpose. Good, Wrecker nodded, his eyes soft with approval. Now show me the phone sequence again. Evie pulled out the burner phone he'd given her. 3 quick calls to your number if I'm in trouble. If I can't talk, I press 4, then hang up. And if you're somewhere unfamiliar? Text my location immediately, then find a defensive position and wait for help. Evie recited, meeting his gaze. "I know it seems like a lot of precautions, but after what we learned about my mom and Lena..." Wrecker's hand found her shoulder, squeezing gently. "Better safe than sorry. The Iron Vultures aren't known for mercy." They spent the afternoon reviewing exit strategies from various buildings, including the clubhouse where they'd be meeting later. Wrecker was patient but insistent, making her practice until each movement became second nature. As evening approached, exhaustion and emotion finally caught up with Evie. She sat heavily on the cabin's couch, her hands trembling slightly. "I don't understand," she whispered. Wrecker knelt in front of her. "What don't you understand?" "Why you're doing all this. Protecting me, teaching me, risking everything." Her voice cracked. "I'm nobody special. Just a waitress who couldn't even save her own mother. I don't deserve..." "Stop!" Wrecker's voice was firm but gentle as his hand cupped her chin, lifting her face to meet his eyes. "You're worth more than you believe, Evie. So much more." The tenderness in his rough voice undid her completely. Tears spilled down her cheeks as years of self-doubt poured out. "Everyone I love gets hurt. I couldn't help Mom, couldn't save her from the cancer or the bills or..." "Shh." Wrecker's thumb brushed away her tears. "You fought for her until the end. That's not failure, that's love." Something shifted in the air between them, electric and inevitable. Wrecker's hand slid to cup her cheek, and Evie found herself leaning into his touch. When his lips met hers, it was like coming home to a place she'd never been. The kiss was gentle, almost reverent. Wrecker's other hand cradled the back of her head as though she were precious, breakable. Evie's fingers curled into his shirt, drawing him closer as the kiss deepened with aching slowness. All the unspoken feelings of the past weeks poured into that single moment of connection. When they finally parted, Wrecker rested his forehead against hers. "You're not alone anymore," he whispered. "I promise." Later that evening, they arrived at the clubhouse for an emergency meeting about increased Iron Vultures activity in the area. The main room was packed with club members, the air thick with tension and cigarette smoke. Unknown to them, Ringo slipped away during the discussions. In a darkened corner of the parking lot, he met with one of Russo's men. "She'll be heading out soon," he muttered, pocketing an envelope thick with cash. "South exit. Always leaves her jacket in the back room." Inside, Evie listened intently as Wrecker outlined security measures. The meeting ran long, and she found herself getting warm under the clubhouse's poor ventilation. "I'm just going to grab my jacket," she whispered to Wrecker. "Back in a minute." He nodded, deep in conversation with another member about patrol schedules. Evie slipped out of the crowded room, heading toward the back where she'd left her denim jacket earlier. The hallway was quiet, her footsteps echoing slightly on the concrete floor. She was reaching for her jacket when a sound behind her made her spin around. Before she could scream, a hand clamped over her mouth. Two men in Iron Vultures cuts dragged her toward the emergency exit. Evie fought back using everything Wrecker had taught her, but a third man appeared with a taser. The shock sent her muscles into spasms as they half-carried, half-dragged her toward a waiting van. "Wrecker!" she tried to scream, but it came out muffled against her captor's glove. Inside the clubhouse, Wrecker suddenly felt uneasy. "Where's Evie?" he asked, scanning the room. When no one answered, he bolted toward the back hallway. He burst through the emergency exit just in time to see the van's doors slam shut. "Evie!" he roared, breaking into a run. But the van's tires squealed against pavement as it peeled away into the night, taking Evie with it. The last thing Evie saw through the van's tinted windows was Wrecker's desperate face as the distance between them grew. And then everything went dark. Wrecker's boots pounded against the asphalt as he sprinted after the vanishing taillights. His heart hammered in his chest, each beat screaming Evie's name. The van's engine roared into the distance, taking with it the woman he'd sworn to protect. No, no, no! The word tore from his throat as he stumbled to a stop, his legs burning from the futile chase. Something glinted on the ground, catching his eye in the harsh parking lot lights. His hands trembled as he bent to pick up the delicate silver chain. It was Evie's necklace, the last gift her mother had given her before passing. The tiny charm, shaped like an angel, hung crooked, its chain broken where it had been yanked from her neck. Wrecker's massive fingers closed around it, the metal digging into his palm. Just like his brother. Just like Tommy. The thought hit him like a physical blow, driving him to his knees on the rough pavement. Once again, he'd failed to protect someone innocent, someone who trusted him. Behind him, the clubhouse door burst open as other angels poured out, alerted by the commotion. Tank's heavy footsteps approached first. "They took her!" Wrecker's voice was raw. "The Iron Vultures, I let them take her." "Brother, this ain't your fault," Tank started, but Wrecker cut him off with a snarl. "I was supposed to keep her safe!" He surged to his feet, grief transforming to rage. "I promised her, just like I promised Tommy, and now—" His fist slammed into the nearest wall, concrete crumbling under the impact. Tank grabbed his shoulder. "Then we get her back, right now. Every angel, every contact, every favor we're owed. We call them all in." Inside the clubhouse, the mission room transformed into a war room within minutes. Maps spread across tables. Phones rang continuously as members called in favors and information. Wrecker stood at the center of it all, still clutching Evie's necklace, his face carved from stone. "Russo's got 3 possible locations," Spider announced, marking points on the map. "Old Warehouse District, the abandoned mine complex, and—" "The cannery," Wrecker interrupted. "He'll take her to the cannery. It's isolated, defendable, and close to their main routes." His voice was hollow, mechanical, drawing from years of tactical experience while his heart bled. Hours crawled by. Wrecker refused the coffee and food brought to him, his eyes never leaving the maps and intel reports. Every minute that passed was another minute Evie spent in terror, another minute he'd failed her. The memory of their kiss just hours ago twisted like a knife in his chest. "You need to rest, brother," Tank tried around. 3 in the morning. "You're no good to her, exhausted." "I'll rest when she's safe." Wrecker's reply was final, brooking no argument. He couldn't close his eyes. Every time he blinked, he saw Tommy's broken body, saw Evie's terrified face as the van door slammed shut. Miles away, in the abandoned cannery, Evie woke to cold concrete and the smell of rust. Her wrists were bound behind her back, shoulders aching from the position. The massive processing floor lay dark and silent around her, moonlight filtering through broken windows high above. Fear clawed at her throat, threatening to overwhelm her. But Wrecker's words echoed in her mind. "As long as I breathe, no one touches you." She clung to that promise, to the memory of his gentle strength. "Please," she whispered into the darkness, a prayer carried on trembling breath. "Please give him wisdom to find me. Give me strength to endure, and—" She hesitated, remembering her mother's teachings about grace. "Help these men find mercy in their hearts." Heavy footsteps approached. Evie's prayer fell silent, but its peace remained in her heart. She thought of Wrecker, his quiet faith, his battle for redemption, the tenderness in his kiss. Whatever came next, she would face it with the same courage she'd seen in him. Back at the clubhouse, dawn painted the sky in shades of blood and gold. Wrecker stood at the window, Evie's necklace wrapped around his scarred knuckles. His phone buzzed, a message from a trusted contact in law enforcement. Unusual activity at the cannery, Tank read over his shoulder. Multiple vehicles, armed guards, has to be them. Wrecker's fingers tightened around the necklace until the charm's edges bit into his palm. "Gather everyone," he ordered, his voice deadly calm. "We move in 30 minutes. Tank nodded, already reaching for his phone. "How we playing this?" "Smart. Quiet. We go in surgical, not guns blazing." Wrecker turned from the window, his eyes holding the same intensity they'd carried all night. "I'm not losing anyone else I love. Not ever again." The word love hung in the air, the first time he'd spoken it aloud. But there was no time to dwell on it now. Liv's hung in the balance. Evie's life hung in the balance. As angels began gathering their gear, Wrecker touched the necklace one last time before carefully tucking it into his pocket. This time would be different. This time, he wouldn't fail. The rescue squad assembled in the pre-dawn light, engines rumbling like distant thunder. Wrecker mounted his bike, every movement precise and controlled. They had satellite images of the cannery, guard positions marked, entry points identified. No detail left to chance. As the sun breached the horizon, 20 motorcycles roared to life. Wrecker led the formation, his brother's memory and Evie's smile driving him forward. The time for guilt was over. Now was the time for action. The morning sun cast long shadows across the industrial wasteland as 20 motorcycles thundered down the empty roads. Wrecker led the formation, his focus razor-sharp, every sense attuned to the mission ahead. The cannery's rusted skeleton loomed against the pink-orange sky, a hulking monument to forgotten industry. Inside the processing floor, Evie struggled against her restraints as Russo circled her like a predator. His expensive shoes clicked against the concrete, echoing in the cavernous space. "Such a waste of time," he sneered, stopping in front of her. "Just tell me where the girl is, and this all ends." Evie lifted her chin, fear mixing with determination in her chest. "I already told you. I don't know where Lena is. My mother helped her. I never knew the details." "Your mother," Russo spat the word. "Another bleeding heart who couldn't mind her own business." He leaned close, his cologne unable to mask the smell of cigarettes. "Compassion is weakness. It gets people killed." Something sparked in Evie's heart, a flame of certainty burning away her fear. "You're wrong," she said, her voice steady. "Compassion saved Lena, and it'll save me too, because unlike you, I'm not alone anymore." Russo's face twisted. He drew a pistol from his jacket, the metal gleaming dully in the dawn light. "Wrong answer." The main doors exploded inward with a deafening crash. Bikers poured through the opening like an avenging tide, Wrecker at their head. The processing floor erupted into chaos as angels clashed with Russo's men. Wrecker carved through the melee with singular purpose, his eyes locked on Evie. But before he could reach her, she did something that stopped everyone in their tracks. She stood up, shoulders straight despite her bound hands, and stepped between Wrecker and Russo's raised gun. Her voice rang out clear and strong. "I'm not alone anymore." The simple declaration held power that seemed to freeze time. Russo's sneer faltered. Wrecker moved with lightning speed, disarming him with a precise strike that sent the pistol skittering across the floor. He could have ended it there. One more punch, one final act of vengeance. But as he held Russo against the wall, Wrecker saw Evie's face, saw the strength in her compassion, saw a better way forward. "You're done," Wrecker growled, twisting Russo's arms behind his back as police sirens wailed in the distance. "The law can handle you now." Tank appeared with zip ties, securing Russo while other angels rounded up his remaining men. Wrecker turned to Evie, his hands gentle as he freed her wrists. The moment her arms were loose, she fell into his embrace. "I knew you'd come," she whispered against his chest. Wrecker held her close, one hand cradling her head as red and blue lights began flashing through the high windows. "Always," he promised. "Always." The sirens grew louder, but neither moved to break their embrace. In that moment, surrounded by chaos yet wrapped in safety, they had found something stronger than fear, more powerful than violence. They had found each other. The late afternoon sun filtered through the cabin windows as Wrecker helped Evie settle onto the living room couch. After hours of police statements and medical examinations, exhaustion lined her face, but her eyes held steady strength. "The paramedic said you're bruised, but nothing's broken," Wrecker said softly, draping a warm blanket over her legs. "Still, you need rest." Evie nodded, sinking into the cushions. "I never thought I'd be so happy to see this couch again." Wrecker's large hands were surprisingly gentle as he brought her a cup of chamomile tea. "Home looks different when you've almost lost it." That evening, he stayed close, reading quietly while she dozed, ready if she needed anything. When nightmares jolted her awake, his steady presence helped anchor her back to safety. The next morning, Evie found Wrecker at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers and sketches. He looked up when she entered, his face softening. "How are you feeling?" he asked, pulling out a chair for her. "Better," she said, glancing at the documents. "What's all this?" Wrecker took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about changes. Big ones." He spread out what looked like building plans. "I'm stepping back from full-time club life, opening a motorcycle repair shop that'll double as a youth center." Evie's eyes widened. "Really?" He nodded. "Been saving for years. The club supports it. They'll help fund the charity side. Figure we can teach kids mechanics, give them skills, keep them off the streets." His voice grew quiet. "Maybe save some of them before they need saving." Later that day, Evie's strength returned enough to help Wrecker organize his plans. They sat together at the table, her practical mind complementing his vision. She suggested adding a small cafe area where kids could study, and her eyes lit up, describing how they could partner with local schools. The following morning brought more planning. Wrecker showed her the building he'd already purchased, an old garage with good bones and plenty of space. As Evie walked through it, she could see the potential. Workbenches where troubled teens would learn valuable skills, comfortable corners where they could feel safe, a chance to break cycles of violence before they began. "We could call it second chances," she suggested, running her hand along a dusty counter. Wrecker's smile reached his eyes. Perfect. Throughout the day, they worked together, listing needed repairs and dreaming up possibilities. Evie realized she'd found more than safety. She'd found purpose. Every suggestion she made, Wrecker listened with genuine interest. Every idea she shared was met with respect and consideration. As the sun began to set on the third day, they sat together on the cabin's front porch. The sky painted itself in shades of purple and gold, a gentle breeze carrying the scent of desert sage. Evie leaned back in her chair, feeling peace settle deep in her bones. Wrecker's voice came soft in the hallway, gathering dusk. "Do you regret it? The marriage?" Evie turned to look at him, really look at him. This man who'd risked everything to protect her, who showed her daily what real strength looked like. She reached for his hand, threading their fingers together. "I don't regret meeting you," she said softly. "Not for a single moment." His hand tightened around hers as the last rays of sunlight painted the desert in warm gold, two hearts beating in quiet gratitude for all that had brought them to this moment, A week had passed since the confrontation at the cannery, and life at the cabin had settled into a peaceful rhythm. The morning sun filtered through the kitchen windows as Evie prepared coffee, humming softly to herself. The bruises had faded, but more importantly, the fear that had shadowed her for so long had lifted. A knock at the door interrupted her morning routine. Wrecker moved protectively toward the entrance, but his tension eased when he saw Maria from the club standing there with a young woman Evie had never met. "Someone needs to see you, honey," Maria said gently, stepping aside. The visitor was slender with dark hair and kind eyes that seemed familiar somehow. "I'm Lena," she said softly. "Lena Kay. I came as soon as I heard about Russo's arrest." Evie's coffee cup trembled in her hands. "Lena, the girl my mother—" "Yes." Lena's eyes filled with tears. "Your mother saved my life. She hid me when Russo's people were hunting me, then helped me escape to a safe house in Colorado. I've spent the last few years helping other girls get away from situations like mine." Wrecker quietly took the coffee cup from Evie's shaking hands and guided both women to sit on the couch. Maria slipped away, giving them privacy. "I never knew the whole story," Evie whispered. "Mom never told me details. I just remembered you staying with us briefly, then disappearing." "She was protecting both of us by keeping you in the dark," Lena explained. "She was the kindest, bravest woman I've ever known. When I heard what happened with Russo targeting you..." Her voice broke. "I'm so sorry you got caught in the crossfire of my past." Evie reached for Lena's hand. "No, don't apologize. Mom would have helped you again in a heartbeat. And maybe..." She glanced at Wrecker, who watched them with gentle understanding. "Maybe everything happened exactly as it needed to." They spent the morning sharing stories, Lena describing how Evie's mother had shown her that compassion wasn't weakness, and Evie finally understanding the full scope of her mother's quiet courage. When Lena left, promising to stay in touch, Evie felt lighter, as if a missing piece of her heart had finally clicked into place. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Wrecker seemed contemplative. "Having Lena here, seeing that part of your mother's story come full circle, it made me think about circles of our own." He took her hand, his touch warm and familiar now. "Our marriage started as protection, but it's grown into something else entirely, something real and precious." He turned to face her fully. "I'd like to do it again, renew our vows, not because we have to, but because we choose to. What do you think?" Evie's heart swelled with emotion. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times yes." The backyard gathering came together naturally over the next few days. Maria strung fairy lights through the trees. Bullet and Crow set up simple wooden chairs on the grass. The club members who had become family helped transform the space into something magical, yet understated. The evening was perfect, warm with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of desert flowers. Evie chose a simple white sundress, leaving her feet bare to feel the soft grass beneath them. Close friends from both the club and community filled the chairs, creating an intimate circle of support. As the setting sun painted the sky in soft pinks and golds, Evie walked the short aisle toward Wrecker. He stood waiting for her, his eyes full of wonder and love, looking nothing like the intimidating figure she'd first met. This was her Wrecker, gentle, protective, and completely hers. The old priest who had married them the first time smiled knowingly as he began the ceremony. This time every word was chosen with care and meaning. Wrecker's vows came from deep in his heart. "I promise to love you both gently and fiercely, to protect you not because you need it, but because you deserve it, to be the man you believe I can be, and to walk beside you in whatever path you choose." Evie's voice was clear and strong as she replied, "I promise to stand beside the man who not only saved my life, but helped me believe in myself again, to face whatever comes together, to be your peace and your partner, and to love you exactly as you are." When they kissed, their friends cheered softly, but Evie barely heard them. She leaned close to Wrecker's ear and whispered, "I'm yours now too." His arms tightened around her, and she felt his smile against her hair. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, they stood together, holding hands and surrounded by love. Their path forward was clear, a life built on trust, redemption, and most importantly, love that was freely chosen. The soft lights twinkled in the trees, and gentle laughter floated on the evening air as their friends celebrated with them. In that perfect moment, Evie knew with absolute certainty that she had found her true home. Not in a place, but in the heart of a man who had started as her protector and become her everything. If this story made you pause, reflect, or even smile, don't forget to subscribe. I post daily, and the next story might be exactly what you need to hear.